One of the most used medicines on the planet started as bark somebody chewed for pain. Centuries before anyone could own a patent on it or charge for the bottle it comes in now. There used to be a shelf like that in almost every kitchen in the world. Nobody had to explain what was on it because everybody's grandmother already knew. Most of what sat on that shelf is still sitting there today. What's missing isn't the remedy. It's the reason anyone still trusts it. If you think what's in your medicine cabinet is expensive now, wait until you find out how much of it used to cost nothing at all. And wait until you learn that one of the 7 remedies on this list, the one people trusted longest, turns out to be the one you should actually throw away. So how does an entire system of medicine get erased from a kitchen shelf without anyone noticing it happened? And why does the exact same plant that saved lives for 3,000 years stop counting as real medicine the moment it stops being sold in a box? Before we get to that, we have to go back, because this story starts long before there was a pharmacy on every corner. Before there was a pharmacy on every corner, there was a shelf in the kitchen and someone in the house who knew exactly what to take off it. For most of human history, that person had no medical degree, no license, no white coat. She had memory, a garden out back, and a papyrus or a handwritten notebook passed down from someone older than her, copied by hand, corrected in the margins, added to every time something new worked. The oldest surviving version of that notebook is Egyptian. The Ebers Papyrus, written around 1550 BCE, lists more than 800 plant-based remedies. Honey packed into open wounds, willow bark chewed for pain, garlic handed daily to the men building the pyramids. None of these people knew the word antimicrobial or inflammation or blood pressure. They knew what worked because they watched it work, generation after generation, with no patent office and no clinical trial standing between the plant and the patient who needed it. That system ran the world for 35 centuries. Empires rose and fell inside it. Then, in less than 200 years, a blink, measured against 35 centuries, it nearly vanished from memory, not because it stopped working, because something else got built on top of it, with a business model the kitchen shelf never had. 7 of those old remedies are still sitting in cabinets across this country right now. What changed isn't the plant. It's that almost nobody left can tell you why it's there. Stick around, because remedy number 5 belonged to one of the most important physicians in medieval history. And by the end of this list, one of these 7 turns out to be the one you should actually throw away. Number 1 is honey, and it's the oldest medicine on this entire list with a paper trail. The Ebers Papyrus prescribes it sealed into open wounds with linen over 3,000 years before anyone isolated a single microbe. Its low moisture content alone starves most bacteria before they can take hold. The Egyptians didn't have that word either. They just knew wounds packed in honey closed clean, and wounds left bare didn't. In 2007, 105 children were given one of 3 things before bed: honey, dextromethorphan, the drug in most cough syrups, or nothing at all. Parents rated their kids' sleep and cough the next morning. Honey won outright, not a tie with the manufactured drug. A win against a chemical designed in a lab from a jar that predates written law. Number 2 is willow bark, and I have to correct something before I tell you why it matters. You've probably heard that Hippocrates himself recommended willow bark tea for pain. It gets repeated everywhere, cited without a source. That specific claim doesn't actually appear anywhere in the Hippocratic texts. Historians of medicine have looked for it and come up empty. What's real is older and stranger than the myth. The Ebers Papyrus lists willow for pain relief in the same era as the honey remedies. No fictional endorsement required. In 1828, a German pharmacist isolated the compound responsible and called it salicin. 69 years later, a chemist at Bayer named Felix Hoffmann modified it into something gentler on the stomach: acetylsalicylic acid. You know it as aspirin. One of the most used drugs in the history of medicine started as bark somebody chewed for a headache, thousands of years before anyone could explain why it worked. Number 3 is garlic, and the ancient Egyptians treated it almost like currency. Workers building the pyramids were given garlic daily, recorded as essential to sustaining the strength that labor demanded, not seasoning infrastructure. The Ebers Papyrus, listed among its 800 remedies, prescribed specifically for respiratory complaints. A modern meta-analysis pooling 108 randomized trials, 7,137 participants in total, found garlic supplementation produced a real measurable drop in systolic blood pressure. Not one study with a flattering result. 108 separate research teams, working independently, landing on the same conclusion about a bulb anyone can grow in a backyard. Number 4 is chicken soup, and the physician who prescribed it wasn't a folk healer. Moses Maimonides ran the medical staff of the Sultan of Egypt in the 12th century. In his treatise on the cause of symptoms, he recommends a specific broth, rue, beets, and chicken, for patients struggling to breathe. This is where the phrase Jewish penicillin comes from, 800 years before penicillin existed. In the year 2000, the journal Chest actually tested that soup in a lab against human neutrophils, the white blood cells that drive inflammation in an irritated airway. The soup measurably slowed their movement. Maimonides never had the word neutrophil in his vocabulary. He had a sick patient in front of him and a pot on the fire, and 8 centuries later, the mechanism checked out. Number 5 is Comfrey, and this is where the story turns. Its Old English name is knitbone, not a metaphor, a job description. Greek and Roman physicians packed the crushed root directly onto broken bones and watched them knit together faster. For most of recorded history, comfrey sat among the most trusted plants in the entire medicine chest. Recommended without hesitation, generation after generation. Here's what modern chemistry found waiting inside it. Comfrey contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids, compounds your own liver enzymes convert into toxins capable of damaging the small blood vessels inside the organ. Taken internally, over time, comfrey can cause real, sometimes irreversible, liver injury. It's why oral comfrey products are banned or tightly restricted in most countries on Earth today. Being old does not automatically mean being safe. Sometimes the forgetting was the correct call, and comfrey is the proof. Number 6 is peppermint oil, and the ancient Greeks prescribed it for exactly the problem it still treats today. Mint's medicinal use for digestion traces back to Greece, Rome, and Egypt, recommended to settle the stomach and increase bile flow after eating. That's not folklore dressed up as medicine. That was the original prescription, written down. The modern evidence is some of the cleanest on this entire list. A meta-analysis of 5 trials and 175 patients found a statistically significant reduction in irritable bowel syndrome symptoms. A larger 2022 review, 10 studies over 1,000 participants, confirmed it again. Less pain, better overall symptoms, though with more side effects than a placebo. An oil the Romans reached for after a heavy meal is today peer-reviewed treatment for one of the most common gut disorders in modern medicine. Number 7 is witch hazel, and it's the only remedy on this list Europe didn't bring across the ocean. The Cherokee and Iroquois used it for hemorrhoids, sore muscles, insect bites, and skin irritation for generations before European settlers ever reached the continent. And once they did, they adopted the remedy directly from the people who already knew it worked. It never left the shelf. Witch hazel is recognized today by the FDA, the American drug regulator, as an approved over-the-counter treatment for hemorrhoids, one of the few plant remedies on this entire list with that level of regulatory backing. A clinical trial comparing it to low-dose hydrocortisone for eczema-like skin inflammation found it held up respectably, though the steroids still performed better overall. Indigenous medicine still sitting on pharmacy shelves today under its own original name. Here's the number everyone quotes, $2.6 billion. That's what Tufts University says it costs on average to bring one new drug from a laboratory bench to a pharmacy shelf. 10 to 15 years of work folded into a single sticker price. I have to be honest about this figure because honesty about numbers is the entire premise of this channel. It's disputed. Public Citizen, a nonprofit that has tracked pharmaceutical costs for decades, argues the real number, properly adjusted, is closer to $90 million, a tenth of what Tufts claims. That's not a rounding error. That's two credible sources landing a full order of magnitude apart, and I'm not going to pretend either one has settled the argument. Here's what nobody disputes. On either side of that gap, you cannot patent honey. You cannot patent garlic, or a plant growing wild in half the backyards in North America. A company can patent a purified molecule extracted from a plant. That's exactly how willow bark became aspirin. But it cannot patent the plant itself, and documented pharmaceutical research shows sponsors decline to develop even a promising compound when there's no patent waiting at the end of it. There's no way to recover a clinical trial's cost on something anyone can grow for free in a window box. That's the actual answer to the question this episode opened with. It's not a conspiracy. Comfrey's liver risk isn't hidden from you. Every regulator that restricts it says so in public documents anyone can read. What's missing isn't information, it's investment. Nobody funds the $50 million trial for garlic because nobody can own garlic once the trial is finished. 7 remedies: Egypt, medieval Cairo, Rome, North America, 4 civilizations, none of them talking to each other, all reaching for versions of the same shelf. 6 of these held up almost exactly as documented, sometimes centuries before the mechanism behind them had a name. One of them, modern science, proved genuinely dangerous, and that's not a footnote to this story. It's the point. These remedies didn't stop working. They stopped being profitable. The next time something in your medicine cabinet costs $12 for 3 ingredients, it's worth checking what your grandmother already had sitting in her kitchen, and whether anyone ever bothered to tell you why it worked. Comfrey should be enough to remind you that natural and safe are not always the same word, so check before you trust. If you want the historical source and the modern study behind every remedy this channel covers, subscribe. New episode, same rule. Nothing makes this list without both.